You are writing a story with your life, and it's interwoven with my story. Let's make it a real page turner. Sometimes we may laugh, and sometimes we may cry, but we can face whatever may come because we have faith for the journey, hope for the future, and love for those who are drawn onward with us through the story. I'm Teresa Janzen, and this is Drawn Onward. Good day and welcome to Drawn Onward. Today I have a special guest with me. I have Pastor Jenn Dafoe-Turner. Well, you and I met before the She Writes for Him project. I've been interviewing all of the authors on the She Writes for Him Stories of Living Hope project, but you and I actually met during a writers conference before the project. Am I remembering that correctly?
You are
Yeah.
remembering that correctly. Yes. It was
I
at the
remember.
She Writes for Him conference,
Oh,
but it was before the project. Yes.
And I was pleasantly surprised when I saw the list of authors. I saw a couple of names I recognized, and yours was one of them. I remember talking to you during the conference.
Yes, we actually we hit it off quite well. I was also pleasantly surprised as well when I got the table of contents and seen that you were in there as well.
So now here we are collaborating on this amazing compilation of stories of redemptive hope. And I know that you have a powerful story, and as all of the authors in there do, it's just amazing to see how God has worked to transform the lives of people in so many different ways, and yet so true to his good nature, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about your background, just to get us going here.
Well, I was not raised in a Christian home, so I actually came to faith in my early 20s, probably about 25, so mid 20s. And from that time on, God has just kind of had a hold of me. I would like to say that it was just a great walk since then, but of course, that is not true. And so, as with any relationship, the Lord and I have had our ups and downs. And of course, all the downs were my doing, not the Lord's. But, He is so gracious and such a loving Father that at His appointed time, I was able to return to the fold in such a way that was so life changing and life giving. So I am a pastor, which if somebody had said that to me when I was a child growing up, I would have said, "You are crazy." But here we are, living the dream.
Right,
So, yeah.
exactly. That's really funny. I have my second daughter has a very strong personality, and when she was only 2 years old, I had a caregiver who said, that child will either be a motorcycle gang leader or a pastor.
And what is she now?
She is neither one. She's a wonderful mom, but she still has a really strong personality and passion for the world. You never wonder what she's thinking.
I have one of those myself.
Yes, it happens.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think sometimes, well, God calls all kinds of different people into ministry for all kinds of different reasons. So tell me a little bit about how faith was established in your life then as a young adult.
So we actually went to the church where I'm actually pastoring right now is the church I got saved in. It's the church that my husband went to caravans in as a child. We got married in this church. All of our children were dedicated in this church. And that's how I actually ended up becoming a Christian. We felt that our children needed to be dedicated to the Lord. That was the right thing to do. And so we had our first two boys done. We have four children. And then when we had our daughter, we had decided that, you know what, we didn't live the lifestyle, so we were not going to pursue dedicating our daughter. But my father, who is not a religious man at all, he insisted that we have her dedicated. he said, you cannot have the boys dedicate it without having her done. So I phoned up the church and I said, listen, I said, I am not interested in anything you have to say, but I do want my daughter dedicated. Are you interested in doing it? And he said, I'd love to. And that man, Pastor Keith, and his wife, Heather, they really took myself and my husband under their wings and they discipled us. And it was from that moment on, we started attending the church, not my husband, but myself and our kids once our daughter was dedicated. And so that was in March. And then in December, it was December 6th, I was sitting in the very back pew of the church. I remember it like it was yesterday. I call it the most unholy spot in the church because it's the closest to the door. You can run out, and that's it. But that day I was sitting there, and Pastor Keith, he had just preached a message about forgiveness of sins and the freedom that we could have. And I heard, it's time, Jennifer, when he gave the altar call. And I heard a voice behind me say that. So I actually went like this and to look to see who was there. And there was nobody there. It was the voice of God speaking to me. And so at that point in time, I passed my little guy that I was holding on to my friend, and I walked forward. And as I walked to the front of the church, that aisle never seemed so long in my whole life. Even the day I got married, it didn't seem that long. But as I got up to the altar, there was my whole body shook. Like I can't even explain. It just shook. It was so powerful, such a powerful experience for me. So
Wow.
that was beginning of faith.
What I love about that story, for sure, it was God's voice that you answered the call, but it was human beings who just they were willing to receive you as you were and not say, oh, you don't qualify or anything to come to the church. But God used people to just say, come as you are, come when you're ready. And it's because they weren't super judgmental and things like that that you were even able to sit on the back row rather
Yeah.
than being outside. You said that you are married, you have 4 children now,
Yes,
and
and 3 grandkids.
oh wow, I didn't know
Yes.
that.
Yes. So our children are 30, 24, 23, and 22. And then we have 3 grandchildren. They're all 9 months apart. It's almost like having my own kids again when they were small, because our kids, our last 3 were all like that, 9 months.
Are they near you there where you're
Yes.
living?
Yeah. So they're all within about 10 minutes of us.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, we are
That must
blessed.
be amazing. Yeah,
Yes,
I
it
have
is.
not had
Yeah.
that experience. I have 10 and almost 11 grandchildren, but of course I live on the other side of the world from them. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's a different experience, but a wonderful experience to be a grandma for sure.
Yes. Yes.
So how did writing become a part of your life?
You know what? You're probably going to laugh at this, but I have always known I was set apart. Right from, I remember walking down the road in Port Hope, Choate Road. I was actually on my way into town to steal a pack of cigarettes. That's where I was going. And I was walking down the road. And I remember I used to have the best conversations with myself. And um, I realize now it was the voice of the Lord that was speaking to me. But he always said to me, you are going through this for a reason. There is a purpose in this. And then as I got a little bit older, I used to say to my husband, because we met very young, I was 14 when we met. And I used to say to him, I feel like I need to write a book. I feel like I need to write a book. I feel like I need to write a book. And so I've actually written my story out. I haven't published it yet, but it is in the making to be published one day.
So had you gone to other writing conferences before the She Writes for Him conference? That was your very first.
My very first one. It was at the Speak Up conference that they talked about stories of living hope. And they had talked about that at She Writes for Him as well. And I had thought about entering and submitting my story, and then I just forgot about it. As you can tell, I forget about a lot of things the Lord asks me to do because I don't actually feel qualified to do it. But so when we were at the Speak Up conference and that opportunity came up again, um, I felt very strongly the Lord say, "You need to do this." And so I wrote out my story and I sent it in.
So will this be your first work that's published in a book?
Yes.
Okay. And
Yeah.
do you have a blog? Do you have somewhere else where you write currently?
So I have I don't really have a blog. I have a vlog. So I do a
Okay.
video. I do a daily devotional Tuesday to Friday on Facebook, and then we do our Sunday morning services live on Sundays as well. So, but Tuesdays to Fridays, I do a devotion every day. And then Fridays, what I do is I actually interview people on Fridays, much like we're doing here, and just hearing people's stories. I love to hear people's stories, and I
Mm,
love giving opportunity for people to share their stories because when we do, it gives other people permission to share theirs. And that's powerful. There's healing in that, right? The more we
right.
can get out the trauma and the traumatic things that have happened to us, the more God can fill us with the good things that He has for us and the healing that He has for us, right?
Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
So how can people find you?
So, sure. You can find me on Facebook at Jenn Dafoe-Turner. You can also find me on Facebook under Cambridge Preston Church of the Nazarene.
Okay.
And then I'm also on Instagram on Jen_Dafoe_Turner.
And of course, your website at jenndafoeturner.wordpress.com.
So you mentioned that you have written the whole story and that someday it will be a book. Is there any timeline on that, or you're just waiting for that to be revealed?
I'm waiting for that to be revealed. I am working on a different project, though. So I'm working right now on a devotional on Jonah about addiction and supporting an addict, especially with uh, people in ministry. So
Mm,
people in ministry who struggle with addiction um, have a very hard time just coming out and saying, I have a problem. Because in ministry, people are watching all the time, right? People are watching. And so if you were to come out and say, I am struggling with this addiction, uh, people then also, um, even though it should elevate your credibility, it actually lowers your credibility if you understand what I mean by
I
that.
do.
And which is unfortunate because people in ministry are human.
Yeah.
You know, people forget that we are human. God has called us and He has equipped us, but it doesn't mean that we are above everybody else. It means that our calling is different. And I think by creating a safe space for people in ministry to be able to talk about addiction, to be able to say, you know what, I could really use a cigarette right now, or a drink right now, or whatever right now, and not act on that without people looking down on them. Um, and even looking at why they're wanting that whatever it is, that vice that they use, why they want that right at that moment. But being able to just have that frank conversation is so empowering. It's so life-giving, and it's so it's like, instead of stuffing, which is caused the alcoholism in the first place, right? The
Right.
stuffing, it's like letting it all out, and that's very freeing.
For sure. Well, and I knew from our discussions during the conference that you have a ministry towards addiction and that you write about addiction. But I saw in the table of contents for She Writes for Him, your contribution is, I think, is it under suffering?
It is, yes.
Yeah. So is it a
Yes.
different story altogether?
No. So what happened was I had became a Christian, like I had said, and the Lord called me to ministry. And I did not understand that the Lord was inviting me into a period of suffering with Him. I had no clue what that meant, even that it was a thing, even that God would invite people into a period of suffering with Him. And yet, still, that's exactly what He did. He was inviting me into this period of suffering. And I balked at it 100%. And I thought, like we had 8 deaths in our family in 1 year. The church was under attack. Um, you know, it was hell on earth if I could use that. And I thought, Lord, if this is what serving you is like, I'm good. I'm done. I don't want this. Not connecting the fact that God was inviting me into this time of closeness, into this time of intimacy, because that's what suffering brings, right? Suffering brings us into the closest closeness. It actually takes us right into the bosom of the Lord, suffering. And I missed that. And I ran away from that. And when I ran away from that, I took back everything that God had healed me from. And that included drugs and alcohol. I added some new things, prostitution, same-sex relationships, different things like that. And I was like, I'm good. I'm good. And so, so please don't suffer like me. Don't do it.
So that's really interesting when you said, please don't suffer like me. And so I think what you're saying is don't suffer, rather embrace the suffering. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Wow.
Actually, that is exactly what I'm saying. Since coming back to the Lord, and that is what this story is in the She Writes for Him, is how the Lord drew me back to Him after me leaving. Since coming back, I have since been invited back into that time of suffering with the Lord. And let me tell you, suffering with the Lord is amazing. Suffering with the Lord brings about growth, brings about wisdom, brings about a closeness with God that we don't get if we don't suffer with Him. And I don't know, embrace the suffering, embrace it, because there's something good in there. There is something good in there.
I just feel like I'm going to meditate on that idea today because I just feel drawn to that concept. So I'm going to take some time to process that even myself, and I hope our listeners do too. All right, well, thank you for being with us today. We really appreciate getting to know you a little bit, Pastor Jenn, and then about the upcoming book, the She Writes for Him, Stories of Living Hope. And then we'll have to watch to see when the next chapter is written.
Yes, awesome.
All right, thanks so much.
DrawnOnwarD is more than an amazing palindrome. It's a production of TeresaJanzen.com.